Hi everybody, as Ken just said, my name is Paula from Urban Sprout. I also previously started my horticultural career as a landscape designer, and I found my passion, I suppose, helping people growing vegetables, which was a steep learning curve for me coming from the UK, trying to grow veggies here. I still think spring comes after Christmas. And I'm still absolutely amazed that I can grow bananas in my front garden. So over the past 7 or 8 years, I've become very involved in community and school gardens, helping people growing veggies in community settings. The picture on the left is a daycare centre, and on the right, that's us doing some workshops at, again, another childcare centre. But from that, that work, I suppose I started to see a market for people wanting to grow vegetables at home, and that's really where Urban Sprout was born from. So our customers are people that are possibly new to veggie growing. They don't necessarily have the time, or don't think they have the time to grow veggies, or they don't think they have the space. And they also lack the knowledge. There seems to have been a sort of gap in the generational pass down of knowledge of gardening and also cooking, which to me is sort of part of gardening. There's no point growing something if you then don't know what to do with it and how to cook it and prepare it. And so the other thing that we do as a company is educate, and we do that through workshops, online newsletters, blogs. And I'd like to particularly talk tonight about one aspect of this education, and that's the Magic Harvest program, of which I've been a facilitator in various groups around Adelaide. The Magic Harvest program is based, the theory of it is based on this book, which some of you may have seen, The One Magic Square by Paula Winen. And basically what happened, a lady called Tori Morton loved this book and realised that there could be a way of getting out to more people, the principles and the ideas in it. And so it was started as a collaboration between Onkaparinga Council, SA Health and OPAL, which is obesity prevention in children. And it's, as I say, it's set in the community. It's a community development program, and it's a response to that sort of lack of gardening and cooking knowledge. So it provides a basic level of education in growing vegetables as well as the cooking. And this is a couple of groups that I've been involved in. The Magic Harvest program runs over a gardening season, either spring or summer, and that's, spring or autumn, and that's because basically they're the two easiest vegetable growing times in Adelaide. Winter is fine, but it's cold, so you don't get things growing quickly enough for possibly new people that want to see the results. You know, they're all really keen, they get the seedlings, they want to be starting to eat this stuff. So we try and avoid winter for that reason. And obviously summer is really hard. It can be very hot. It can be very challenging for people that have never grown vegetables before. And it also has a pass it on component. And this again is about spreading the message out to more people. If any of you saw the Jamie Oliver programs out of the UK, you know, the idea that you teach one person and then they might go to their local community and teach 3 or 4 more, so you reach a much bigger spread of people. And The final component of it, I suppose, is the celebration at the end, and that's just a sort of coming together of the group to see what they've learnt and to celebrate their successes. It's run over 6 or 7 sessions. Groups tend to meet fortnightly at a demonstration garden, and then they follow the program in their own home. So we garden together in normally a community setting, whether that's a community centre or a school or a daycare centre, and then the participants can also take home seedlings and compost and follow the same program. It's about keeping it small and simple. It's about using quality products. So basically this book is organic gardening, and obviously there are no chemicals, and it's kept at a simple basic level, so it's available to all ages and abilities, people with low literacy, English as a second language. So that's just a workshop being held in a community garden. Some of the Magic Harvest programs that have been running, there's been some in financially disadvantaged areas, so housing trust areas, where there's a lack of shops, there's a lack of access to good quality fresh fruit and vegetables. There's certain sort of black spots in Adelaide where there just aren't basically fruit and vegetables to buy. It's really, really limited. It's quite scary. Some of the participants have been new arrivals, people on refugee visas, and also asylum seekers. And the gentleman on the left, so that's his home plot. So you can see it's pretty basic. He's in a share house rental and hasn't really got any what we think of as conventional gardening equipment or anything, but still he's managing to produce food for himself and the other people in the house. And a lot of the programs we involve children as well, because again it's that education, it's making sure that the next generation understand the importance of food, where it comes from, that things don't come in bits of plastic. We were talking to somebody at the weekend and we had some celery growing, and she was absolutely amazed and said, "Oh, that's what a celery plant looks like. I didn't realise it grew above the ground." So, yeah, it looks like that. So she'd obviously only sort of ever bought sticks, I think, and didn't really sort of understand the actual structure of the plant. And you often hear a lot of this with children. They think all their food comes from the supermarket and it's pre-packaged, and a lot don't get to see it in its sort of natural or raw state. So while I talk to you about Magic Harvest, what can we learn from the program? And I believe one thing that it can do is help us start making a difference in our lives and at home. There are key elements of the Magic Harvest program that we can take into private homes. I think the first one for people that have never gardened before, veggie gardens, keep it small. Start with easy crops. Often I say to people, if you've never grown anything, grow a pot of herbs. They're easy. People will actually use them. There's no point growing things that you're not actually going to eat, as far as I'm concerned. So it's got to be something that's useful to you. And also by starting small and with easier crops, so nothing that's too complicated is going to take a lot of sort of looking after or any sort of complicated routines. They'll get some success, and building that success in then means people will build on that and maybe start growing a little bit more next season. The other thing is that part of the program is talking about soil health, especially in Adelaide, where our soils aren't probably the ideal soils for veggie gardening. And I suppose with veggie gardening, we're going the other way around about it. As Nick said, when you're looking for plants in a landscape setting, it's I suppose what you're doing is you're matching the plants to the environment. So it's a fairly obvious thing if you're trying to look at a sustainable way of planting. So you assess your environment, you say, okay, this plant's going to survive here, it's low water use or whatever. With veggies, we're going the other way around. We're saying we want to grow this plant. How can we then grow it in the environment? So we're actually having to change the environment to a certain extent. And we have to have good soil to grow vegetables. They're basically quick, fast-growing plants that need that water and nutrients. So you can't get away from that. Obviously, there are some sort of exceptions to the rules, but on the whole, you're basically looking at having to make sure that your soil is at its premium. The other thing that Magic Harvest concentrates on is biodiversity in the garden, and this again is getting away from that sort of idea where you just have sort of a traditional allotment where you have a row or 2 rows of carrots, you have a row of potatoes. It's about growing a lot of different plants in one small area, and that can be useful in so many different ways. It can again encourage the good bugs. It can, you can sort of start using companion planting. You can use a larger plant to shelter a smaller plant. So you're manipulating the environment by creating a little microclimate of what you want for your vegetables. There's a lot of talk about home gardens and water use, as Nick mentioned, and there was a lot again of discussion around community gardens and whether they should be allowed to water when we were going through all the water restrictions, and you know, why should our lawns be dying? You know, why should we not be able to water our lawns, but you know, then we won't be allowed to water our veggies as well. But there were some figures around that said $1 of bought vegetables takes over 100 litres of water to produce, whereas $1 of homegrown vegetables is approximately 20 litres. So from that point of view, even though it might be a sort of a relatively large proportion of your water bill going onto your garden, I think it's well worth it. And just obviously the processing and things like that, you're cutting out, the transport, the packaging, all those sorts of things. It's introducing people to chemical-free gardening, and so healthier people, hopefully. And quality and freshness of food. Again, you hear sort of these horror stories about supermarkets holding stuff in storage for year upon year, and apples that are have been in cold storage, you know, for over a year, and so they're just pretty awful to eat. By actually, again, people are quite amazed how vegetables taste when they taste the vegetables they've grown themselves. And because they're a lot of vegetables, obviously you're getting the vitamin content and things like that. The quicker you eat them from being picked, the more you've got of that in there. I found this quote, I hope you can read it. It's by David Suzuki. It's not, again, a great slide, but I'll just read it out. Our personal consumer choices have ecological, social and spiritual consequences. It is time to re-examine some of our deeply held notions that underlie our lifestyles. And for me, this is by introducing people to the concept of veggie gardening in their own homes. it's helping people become aware of those personal choices. And I believe encouraging people to grow vegetables can be very powerful on this journey, and it can be an easy step for people. I think it's not maybe questioning too many beliefs. It's something that can be easily integrated in, whereas if you take, I suppose, this to its extreme, that can be a very large step for a lot of people to take instantly. So as far as personal consumer choices and growing vegetables, obviously the first one, food miles. If you're only having to walk out your back door to collect your vegetables, they're going a lot less than they would have if you've bought them from the supermarket. There's the appreciation of homegrown, locally produced food, and there's the understanding also of how hard it can be to grow food, and I think that's important as well, and that it doesn't just appear, that there is a process there, and it can be tough and it can be challenging. I also mentioned that it means that there's less chemicals in our food chain, and I think it helps towards the overconsumption of processed foods that's happening nowadays. It's very, very hard to overeat on salads or fruit. It's pretty easy to eat, a lot of junk food. And it also promotes an awareness and understanding of the loss of heirloom and old varieties in fruit and vegetable, and why it's so important to know that these are being lost. Again, often the argument comes up, or people understand that from the point of taste. So they'll talk about how supermarket tomatoes don't taste the same as I remember them. They've got no taste, they're just watery, they don't taste of tomatoes. That's very true, and certainly growing your own will give you that taste, but it's also about preserving seeds and our food chain. If we're not actually looking after these seeds, and again, this is a massive topic, then we're handing over our complete food chain right from the beginning to big multinational companies, and they will dictate what we are eating right from the word go, because that will just be what we can access, what seeds we can access from them. And one example of that, there was a program where it was really quite sad. It was in an area of natural disaster, and an aid agency had come through and given the local farmers seeds from a large seed company. And so they planted them, and the first couple of years, fantastic. They were really happy because they were getting far more food than they'd ever grown. But then they realised the aid agency moved on, and they suddenly realised they didn't have their own stores of seeds. They were hybrid plants that they couldn't save the seed from, and they were back into that cycle of poverty and being reliant on aid. So I suppose that's an extreme example, but it could very easily happen in a lot of different areas. So finally, I'd just like to again leave you with one quote from one of my favourite garden designers, Gertrude Jekyll. She said, "A garden is a grand teacher. It teaches patience and careful watchfulness. It teaches industry and thrift. Above all, it teaches entire trust." Thank you.